Hello, and welcome to the evolution of TTRPG rules, the past, present, and future. I am a panel moderator, ET. I use he and they pronouns, or honestly, whatever. I'm not actually super fussed anymore, especially not at 11 o'clock at night. Today, we're going to be talking about the ways in which TTRPG players can be super creative when it comes to making supporting tools for their games. From like laminating grid paper to make maps, to building like 3D battlefields on tables, to creating Minecraft servers and sharing virtual tabletops. These experiences can even move into AR. We're going to explore the past, present, and future of TTRPG tools through research data scattered from players like our viewers. Today, presenting for our panel is Joanna Liu, who goes by she, they pronouns. And Joanna Liu is a tabletop RPG researcher and creator, a VR and AR expert, and CEO of CartographR. That's CartographR AR, and owner of Ribbon and Knot D&D Jewelry. You can also check her out on Twitter. And our other panelist is Max Hobbs. He goes by he, him pronouns. Max Hobbs is the co-host of the Help Action podcast and a full-time nerd. He is a professional dungeon master in Portland, Oregon for a decade. Damn, son.
I know, right?
And he works with some really awesome organizations around the country. We will be taking questions throughout the panel. So if you have them, ask them. And Joanna and Max are going to give us their presentation now. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody.
Hi. Yeah, so it is actually 2 a.m. here in New York. So yeah, adequate lighting, and then getting some like the New York background lighting in.
You're super moody right now, and I'm way into it.
Yeah, I know. Like you get to see 2 a.m. Joanna that most people don't get to see. So yeah.
How often do you get to see 2 a.m. Joanna?
Not very often. I sleep actually very early. I'm an early bird person, so I wake up around 7 and I sleep around 10. So, or 10:30, 11. That's my usual schedule. So,
Last thing I'm going to say about this, I'm a little jealous of your like dramatic lighting because I look like I'm under a heat lamp right now. My burger is cooking, dude.
Live from New York. It's Saturday night. Do you want to tell us about your thesis project?
Yeah. Let's talk about it. So if I can get the slides back up. So my thesis project really started 2019. I was researching something totally different. I was researching on how people collaborate with each other, and how do we learn together as a collective community online. So that's kind of what I did for my Games for Learning master program thesis. And in 2020, everything changed. So my thesis was in 2019 was basically invalid if you think of it, because our online behavior changed so much. So that's kind of from March to June. I re-interviewed 100 game masters via video conference call. You can see Max there, and then you see
That's
a
where I
bunch of
come in.
other people here. We have interviewed some people even like driving in the car, and yeah. So from March to June, that's kind of like we also in the October we did a survey that surveyed 1,006 TTRPG players through Google Form, and those are like long questions and long answers, not just like choose one multiple choice question, but a lot of people wrote paragraphs for us. So
It was really in depth. It's late here too.
Each of the interviews also went way longer than we expected. We kind of started with hoping this would last about, each interview would last about 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes. And of course, when we get to people talking about D&D and TTRPG, people are so excited. So for example, one person we interviewed was like, tell me a little bit about yourself. They're like, okay. And then like, I was born in 1972, and this is my entire life and journey with D&D. We're like, oh, this is 45 minutes later, we just finished the first question. So we have records of like basically 200 hours of people talking about D&D, and this is kind of where this all starts. Yeah.
You could transcribe that whole person's autobiography from that autobiography from that conversation. That would be wild.
Yes, totally. We have many people's autobiography.
Yeah,
Because we ask
apparently.
question, what's your
Me
connection
included.
with D&D? Yeah. All right. So yeah, so that's kind of where this gets started, and then we really get into like kind of talking about we can start with talking about components of TTRPG ecosystem. This is kind of how I organize it. It doesn't mean this is the only way we can organize TTRPG, but this is kind of how I see it. Is break down into communication method, visualization method, mechanic management, and community management, and marketplace. If you think of a communication method, people play the game through face-to-face, snail mail, phone call, video call, AR, VR.
Who did that?
Yeah, some people actually, some dude actually basically still use snail mail with his buddies to play D&D. So you can see each
so devoted.
Each response takes a long time to receive, and each action takes a long time to receive, but it's kind of the anticipation and waiting, apparently.
If you thought your wizard's turn took a long time, boy, howdy.
Yeah, and then in the visualization method is where I think it's the meat of this kind of panel, right? Which is we talk about 2D image representations, 3D physical object representation, and then you have the 2D, 3D digital representation, which we also can see in like, top-down digital maps to hand-drawn like artist drawn maps representation to all the way 3D models and like like also AR VR, right? And then mechanic management, there's a lot of evolution there too, from character sheet, pen, paper to D&D Beyond, dice rollers, descent trackers, condition tracker, note taker, all those tools and apps are out there. In terms of community management, we always had school clubs, forums, social media, how it's moving from in-person to online as well. And also marketplace, there's a whole ecosystem of people selling dice. There's a whole ecosystem of people selling just like maps, and also people selling character art, right? So there's so much has changed in the industry in the last 10 years. It's very interesting to track the changes of how the ecosystem has changed as well.
Character art has always been, as far as marketplace stuff, has always been a big seller and has always been, like the popular thing that people tend to make money off of satellite to role-playing games. But dice making has gone up so much recently, and it's so impressive to see what people can make there.
Is that related to like 3D printing, do you think?
I think a little bit, yeah. Also, the ease of access to things like resin casts and materials to do things like that with have gone way up too, because those prices, it's become such an accessible art form that the prices of those things have gone down so more people can get into it, and it's super cool to see what people end up making. I think 3D printing helps a lot, though.
Yeah, for sure. And then when we talk about this, like everyone here knows this, but I like, why does this matter? Why do we study this? Why game immersion matters? Because, and what is really game immersion, right? Like, I'm sure I see other panels done this already, but like, to me, game immersion is really about experiencing reality firsthand. And this is why we evolve and develop these tools, is really trying to help people to be more immersed and to have that firsthand reality. So when you're being a badass rogue, you're not just out there, like you don't feel like, oh, I'm moving this little character there and to do something, so this represents me. But I feel like that's me. I'm in this, like, that's why people LARP and dress up and then play things as well, because they really want to experience reality firsthand. So I think this is why tools has evolved, is really trying to have that game immersion and helping people to experience firsthand.
You know what my first little tokens that we used for D&D monsters were back in middle school We used like gummy bears, and stopping people from eating them mid-game was a nightmare. Just the worst.
A lot of people mentioned about potato chips representing people, and then like how it's just all gone at the end. Like,
how'd my map get all greasy? It's so gross.
Yeah, so let's talk about the past first. Pen and paper always being kind of inspiration for a lot of people. Even nowadays, people still use it. I love library and love books. So I love like kind of, there's someone talking about used to research and search for old history books. They just color, photocopy them and distribute them to their players. And that's kind of how they did it back then. Is laminated grade paper to draw on them. Also laminated maps. Spent so much money at the printer.
Oh my God.
This is someone we interviewed that said like he would go to places like printer shops and then print this like huge map that he found, and then he would laminate them, do the whole process, and then each week he has a new map for his players. And so basically he was spending $200 on printing maps each week. So obviously his wife got really mad at him, like, are you insane? Why are you doing this? And then, but this guy's just like, this is what I do for my players. So we have definitely evolved. Yeah.
Admittedly, more people in his family picked up on it, because I have this thing right here that his daughter made like a year ago too and gave to me. It's a friend of mine too. That is in the same vein as like watching her dad make these D&D maps forever and then just trying it herself. It was super cool.
And in terms of kind of like go a little bit of how like kind of 2D evolved into present days is through digital drawings, right? So we have all this like flat top-down maps views. Really, I think it's due to the popularity of Roll20 that kind of brought.
Roll20.
I know you have a lot to say about Roll20. We're definitely going to go, into that. Little. But yeah, due to like Roll20, we see an increasing like kind of artists who are drawing this style, right? Top-down maps for you to place your little signs, or even in person, people are still printing these maps and putting it on table, right? So there's a lot of kind of like usage here, and then you see artists creating a lot of good Patreon kind of monthly subscription accounts as well for people to have these maps ready. And going kind of forward into a little bit also present, but like slightly to the future with 2D, is you see how large screens has come to our lives in every aspect of our lives. And it's no stranger to D&D. We have this large TV screens, large tables, gaming tables, and people are just kind of putting these maps together and then having them presented on a huge screen, either it's through a 3D projector projecting down, or a TV screen on the center of the table. So those are some of the methods people are using right now to play. Max,
the projector one. I have one time I got to use the screen in the table, and it was so cool. It took a lot more preparation than I usually do, but whatever. But having that be able to show up with such detail without me spending any money printing it off, or, trying to draw it myself and failing miserably and pretending like this green thing that looks like an egg is actually a tree, forget about it. Don't worry about it. But just throwing the maps up there, having every player access them all at once and having it be so clear and front and center was super cool. I've seen people use the projector method before, and there's like one glaring flaw with the overhead projector, which is if you use a 3D token on it, it's going to cast a shadow and it's going to block out some sort of information somewhere. And if you go to move your token, you're going to block out a bunch of information when you do that. I've seen people do it from the floor up using some like mirrors to get it right, which is so specific. And if anybody nudges the printer even a little bit with their foot, which they will, they're going to ruin your whole map. They're super cool. They just logistically are a little complicated to figure out.
Yeah, this is definitely a way of like seeing how we're trying, right? Like players are
Absolutely.
really trying to have that immersive experience to the next level, and this is kind of one of the ways people are doing it. I do want to mention a little bit about Tilt 5, which is something launched, I think 2019. Some of the information might not be super accurate, updated here, but this is kind of the idea they have is glasses and with a mat. So this one in the center you don't see is a kind of like actually a mat. In the other picture you see it better, more like how they advertise it versus how it actually looks through the glasses. It actually doesn't have that 3D effect that much in the real sign. It's more kind of like if you think of a 3D. You go to the movie theater, watch a 3D movie. Things pop up a little bit when you put on the glasses.
It looks like they were going for like X-Men Danger Room and ended up with Settlers of Catan.
I mean, that might be Catan actually. That you can't. The good thing about this is you can play other board games on.
It really does look like Catan.
Yeah, and then, but then like there's also this expensive gear is one I think getting at is accessibility in terms of price is a little bit not as good. People mentioned about this, but they thought it was cool. But that means everyone who are playing this have to get these glasses, and then you have to learn how to program this, get your map in there. How does it even work? And then there's a lot of questions.
I'm going to pick up on one more thing on that. Can we go back to that last slide real quick? I am going to assume that the picture on the right is a composite image because there's a lot of things going on that don't make a lot of sense. The board looks like Catan. They're clearly holding magic cards, and that's a D&D 4th edition book that's sitting open. I'm not trying to rip on them or anything, but like they're all over the place there.
So yeah, the left one is not the real view of how the things will look, and the right one is they're trying to say you can play cards, you can play board games, and you can play D&D all in one.
Man, if that's what they set out for as one image, they really nailed it.
And in going to 3D, because we talked about 2D a lot, so 3D printing, like we guys just talked about, really driving the price down for kind of getting this. Like used to be this big table as a whole table. You cannot move it. It's not modular. You have your setting and that's it. You have to build different settings of tables. And then we have some very impressive tables for sure. But then people started to say, hey, I like Lego. Can I use Lego to build sets? And it's very time consuming, but people did it. And then moving on to like, we talk about the idea of modular kind of like settings start to come to life. And that became really popular, but still very expensive, right? So 3D has always been associated with cost. And that's even more so than 2D and big TV screens sometimes, because Max, I see in the background you have a lot of 3D miniatures and 3D collections. I'm not going to ask how much money you have spent over all the years.
It's an embarrassing amount.
In our survey, we did ask like how much money do you spend on average on Dungeons and Dragons or TTRPG supplies, and then quite a lot. The answer average is from $200 per year, which is very low end, to $2,000 per year.
That sounds about right. That sounds oof.
And that's not adding to like conventions back right now, right? So that's not even adding to conventions, to all the kind of traveling, hotel stay, all that. If you add all that, that would be crazy amount of money.
E.T., touching on what you mentioned earlier, this particular world right here is where 3D printing has really taken off, which is super cool. I have an example of something my friend printed me a couple weeks ago.
Oh yeah.
which was super cool. This giant dragon turtle mini that he printed off of his cool resin printer. But that has been something that's really, really like stepped up. People selling STL files instead of like individual pieces of terrain. So if you have already taken care of the overhead, picking up your own 3D printer and things like that, which is a lot of overhead to take care of, but that's neither here nor there. It has become a much more affordable way to get this cool 3D terrain. And also for people with, a little bit of like programming know-how and like digital sculpting know-how to start like making a profit, making a living off of making cool things for different role-playing games.
Yeah, definitely increase the marketplace for sure in terms of 3D printing. And talk a little bit about moving to digital models, right? Minecraft, having Minecraft servers and crafting worlds in Minecraft is one way people are doing D&D these days. Yeah, I mean, it kind of shows the generation shift as well, right? From kind of Lego to Minecraft. Kind of Minecraft I see is the next stage of Lego in terms of creation, and where people grew up with Minecraft these days in this like a certain generation, and then before people grew up with Lego. So it's like you see a shift in generation as well.
You know what's really confusing with that? There are Minecraft Lego sets, and like that's two very weird worlds to cross over.
Exactly. Lego just like we need the money for every lessons, anything, everything.
Hey man, if they're gonna jump on it, they're gonna jump on it, and I'm not gonna stop them. But I am gonna observe it and be incredibly curious.
Yeah, I do want to mention TaleSpire has a lot of talks recently.
Love TaleSpire.
It is very, very cool. Building 3D models and playing more like in a dungeon environment. This is basically a computer-based, a desktop-based design, and but still that requires a lot of science. If I'm correct, they may be wrong. If to build that, you need to build every kind of. You actually need to line the walls and then build it. It's still much faster.
Kind of.
Yeah, you still need to. It's still much faster than Minecraft and other things. So you see then the kind of next step of modular, like building your environment and playing a 3D digital game with your friends.
I know that in TaleSpire there are certain like pre-constructed assets you can add to maps and things like that. My friend took me on a whole tour of the world that he made for his game in TaleSpire, and it's admittedly massive and looks beautiful, but he's put like 200 hours into building it. It really shows, but damn, that's a lot of time.
Yeah, really a lot of time people are putting into this. Actually, the average time I think is 8 hours per week for preparing D&D. Well, it doesn't apply to Max, obviously, because Max is a dungeon master that's an improv dungeon master, so he doesn't do prep. He just go and do it. You do minimal prep, I would say.
Can I show you all of my prep for a huge debate I had to do with my players recently?
Sure.
Okay, hold on. Here you go. That's it. I even have terrible, like, big handwriting, so that's not a lot of information.
I was honestly expecting you to come back on screen and have nothing in your hand.
Well, I'm here to defy expectations. Admittedly, I had almost nothing.
So I'm also an improv DM in that way. So a lot of people, it's not like if you look at our data we have collected, we ask people self-identify, do you feel you are improv or you are like very prepared DM. And then we also compared with the entire data and the data kind of like bell curve and to see like where everyone belonged. And you see that a lot of people claim they're improv DM, but based on the data, they're actually not improv DM. But because they will say like, oh, I improv I believe I'm a super improv DM, but then you see, oh, I prepare for 5 to 13 hours for my campaign. So there's a lot of
That's so much time.
Yeah, a lot of people have a lot of different range. The highest number I saw, I think it was like a 20 hour to 30 hour to prepare a campaign. I was like, that's a full-time job. How do you do
Yeah.
anything else?
Did they still call themselves an improv DM after saying they spent that much time preparing?
No, those
Oh,
were
thank
them.
God.
I
I was going to
prepared
say, wow.
crazy. Yeah. Yeah. So like, oh, by the way, and if you see any questions, feel free to shot, and then we can answer them in the middle. But if not, I'll just move on to the kind of next point, is kind of what we imagine things will be or could be the future.
That's just one druid right there.
So yeah, for those who have watched sci-fi movies, probably have all seen this kind of view, right? Like the ideal AR kind of like hologram graphic, like hologram view of something, and then you see people use their hands, do crazy gestures, and move things around like Mission Impossible, all those kind of things. So I think this is kind of like where a lot of people envision the future will be. Are we able to achieve there? I think so. I think there is some middle connector ground to that step, but this is kind of like slightly different ones. Let's talk a little bit about like AR. So going a little bit about the kind of history of AR, if you look at the first image on the left there, that's kind of the first AR idea, right? You have a barcode, you scan the barcode, 3D dude pop up, and then maybe you can tap on it, and then we'll do some action. And that's still true in the AR, but I think that's kind of the very first step of what AR is. And then of course a lot of people remember Pokemon Go. The first version is not even 3D; it's a 2D sticker, right? 2D sticker that popping in the middle of the ground, and you have your camera, and it follows your camera. It stays in the center of the screen. So that's actually the first version of AR. But first
Are you telling me Squirtle isn't real? How dare you?
So first version of AR for D&D, it's kind of something like this. And then the second kind of version is that like something like Sketchfab has this right now. You can just search any model on Sketchfab and then press the AR button, and you can scan your locate. You don't have to scan. You just need to tap, and then it will just kind of put that thing in there, right? And then you can I think you can rotate, you can look around. It's a 3D, pretty cool 3D environment. But if you see it that there, it has a kind of artificial shadow and it's kind of floating. I'm not sure why, but that's kind of the idea. What they're going for is you can make anybody's 3D creation into building AR in your own living room and take a picture with it, or
Cover dungeon.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. And then on the right here is the early version of Cartographer. It's an app that I was making based on the research data I have gathered as a research thesis project. Is how do we make modular AR more sustainable rather than a one-time gimmick? Let me load this, see this, and done with it. So this is a modular building tool. As you can see, you can just use your finger to drag in any environment you want. So you can drag in minis, you can drag in trees, you can move a rock from one location to the next, and then you can move your camera to see details and move out. Anything you want. Basically, create your world in this kind of 3D elements very easily.
It's a ton of fun. I've used it a bunch of times, and you can build really crazy immersive things with it.
Yeah, you can have a dragon right in your living room. You can have, because it scans the ground, so you can have a crazy map. For example, I have some yoga mats on the floor right now. You can use that as a background. You can use a crazy like 2D map, even like combined with the 2D map from previously, and then you can place additional traps and then 3D objects onto the map as well. So yeah, so that's kind of the idea of the AR world creator. And another layer for this is geolocation tagged AR creation, which is, I would say, new anymore. It's like 2-year-old technology, but it is. I still think it's very, very cool. Is where you can basically drag something into a location, and another person can see it happen, the rocket pop up in their phone right there next to by seeing the same location. So you can create this. Go to a park, for example, with two friends, creating same scene together. Let's build a castle together, and then you place uh, a tree here. The other friend place a little tent over the other side, and you can both see it at the same time from different angles.
I want to build a castle.
Yeah. So I think that's a pretty cool kind of like in-person play geolocation idea. You can go to a place and say, hey, I built this castle in the park, go check it out. And another person will go check it out, like Pokemon Go, right? Another way you can do this is remote. Completely remote, but yeah, but don't lead people to Central Park. Obviously, it's not safe at night. A lot of people have been mugged for trying to Pokemon Go hunt in Central Park in
Oh
New York
no.
very late in the night and got mugged because you
That
can.
seems like a terrible idea.
Anyway, so we learned from Pokemon Go, so I think next round will be much better anticipation. A second way of doing this is, how do we play the same sign remotely is another question, especially in the COVID time. So this is kind of the idea of like playing. This is 3 different locations. This is I created during COVID, so what you're seeing is my living room, my bedroom, and my little desk. But this is would work in 3 completely different locations as well. We have tested. So if I place some sign, and another person will see that being that action being happening immediately in on their phone as well.
I had fun building things on my big stupid D&D table I have in my house, and it worked like a fun, dramatic, taverny looking backdrop.
Yeah. Another AR people talk about a lot is AR headsets these days. This is kind of cooler, like, when hand tracking, phone also does hand tracking now, which is a newer development as well. So, but headset now obviously do hand trackings from the beginning, and then you can, for example, make this tower higher, like by using your hand gesture. That's also another thing people do. But AR headsets are so expensive right now. That's kind of the issue with this, is accessibilities. So AR headsets are usually $3,000 for those
Oof.
ones. That's why I think the Tilt 5 was trying really to bring prices down. If you think about it, if their price is way cheaper than this one's, however, like I said, it's kind of like trying to progress the timeline of kind of the technology. I like, how are you doing it, which trajectory you're doing it, give you different results. So AR headset is fantastic, but like I said, price accessibility is crazy. But
Yeah.
with this, all people can wear this and then look around and then see things. They can turn it off, turn it on, right? So there's a lot of pretty cool things you can do with it.
Joanna, real quick, not to crash your train of thought, but I see that we do have a question that was sent to us.
Question.
Okay.
E.T., did you want to read it off?
Oh, I won't. So I'm not supposed to make you read them off.
Oh, then fire away. It's all right.
We one of our viewers asked, have either of you seen a multiplayer form of Jenga for online play, because they have been trying to figure out how to play dreadfully online.
Totally.
And that seems like a really interesting prospect, honestly.
I think don't quote me on this because I haven't tried it personally, but I have heard friends talking about it. I think you can do that on Tabletop Simulator on Steam. I'm pretty sure they have. I can't believe it's not copyright safe Jenga on there that you can definitely interact with, and multiple people can use Tabletop Simulator. It's a super cool program that's not too expensive. I don't think it's free.
I think it's free on Steam.
Oh, is it? Okay, cool.
It's on desktop and also it's on VR as well. So Tabletop Simulator is definitely being used a lot. It's actually probably coming up in my next slide. If not there, that it's kind of like another important development in gaming is Tabletop Simulator, where you can just play a board game, simulate a board game any way we can. And so I kind of put it into the virtual reality section because it's kind of also 3D model, but it's like give you that feel of virtual reality.
Also, if I am not mistaken, I saw a similar conversation happening somewhere in the Roll20 sphere. I can't remember if it was on the forums there or on some subreddit or another, but I did see a big conversation about like the fact that they are planning to put together something like that for Roll20, but figuring out something like Jenga on the 2D plane that is Roll20 is not easy.
Yeah, some games have to be played in 3D format, right? Like some of the board game with so many moving pieces, 2D is just not cutting it. So you kind of have to do 3D.
And honestly, the best thing about a Jenga tower is the smell of a Jenga tower, right? That's what we go in for.
Yeah. So this is kind of what
I don't know what I'm talking about.
So this is kind of the VR kind of like generation we're talking about. If you look at the bottom one, that's kind of the idea of Tabletop Simulator. It's a little bit different, but this is another app. But just to say, this is kind of the idea of how things we're visualizing things right now is everyone sitting around the table and playing virtually, taking one of these virtual avatars, right? So I have a few, like signs with this kind of setup. One is it's kind of really funny. You're playing virtually over a table and kind of looking at minis, but this is great. I love virtual reality as well. I think a few issues. Accuracy is not great in virtual reality. Have you tried virtual reality trying to pick something small?
It's so hard. It's so difficult.
We don't have hand. I mean, obviously we have hand gloves, but who's affording to buy them right now? But without a glove, with a controller, it's really difficult. Some of the newer version now has hand tracking. I think it will be a little bit better, but technology is still new, so tracking is not great. I have a hand tracking controller sign, but they couldn't track my pinky for some reason. My pinky is just missing on there. So there's things that so you can't take notes. You can't really picking things up takes a few sessions, and you can easily accidentally knock things over. I don't know. So
that's exactly. I don't know about you, but part of my VR experience trying to pick up anything smaller than, say, like a glass of water is me just throwing everything out of the way until it's the only thing in front of me. And I can definitely see myself doing that with a bunch of dice and then immediately regretting that I threw my dice all over the room.
Yeah, so I do see there's some flaws. I do see VR developing into future in a much better way, because in the beginning you always try to mimic the exact design of what we used to play in real life to give people that kind of familiarity and then feel like, oh, I know this, I get this. It looks like a real-time play, but just in virtual. And then as we progress, we'll play more immersively, right? Like the Sword Art Online slides I showed earlier, where people are actually using the sword and slashing things and making the movement and fully immersed in something. So that's kind of the second step. So here's just some research data. I know we're kind of short on time. I really want people if anyone has more questions, we can discuss more questions. But this is kind of like some research data we talked about what's being most used right now. I have to say Theater of the Mind is top there because you don't need a lot to play tabletop RPG, right?
Yeah.
A lot of times you need a set of dice, you need your imagination, and then that's it. You may want a player handbook set if you want to, or you don't really have to if your DM is really good at introducing you to science. But the sign I want to talk about like AR. What we can do with AR is another thing we can do. I was thinking about this today is how to build D&D map building tools for blind people. So
yeah, like the oh my god, is it the Louvre that's doing the 3D printed paintings? Yeah, those are so cool.
So there's like kind of immersive experience, but AR can also do it easier because there's already mobile phone interaction for blind people, and you can like. So I was actually talking about this how to build that into Cartographer today. Is you can do like have the sound activated, right? So you can have like tree 3 feet ahead, right? Like, and then you move, and then the phone tell you exactly what you are encountering and seeing. So anyway, so I think that's a super cool way to do this. And then like a plant, like for example, place rock here, right? So I think that would be a really cool thing as well. It's accessibility, thinking about the future and how people can be more accessible to every song. So yeah,
Totally.
we're gonna end with this slide. Like how people see things in all this next 10, 25, 50 years. We can totally discuss that. But this is kind of how a lot of people are thinking about is 3D, AR, hologram, VR, right? Like all the things we talked about today. So that's why those topics were chosen to look at. But yeah, so our survey, the next kind of next year's survey is coming up in November. We do it by school year, so it's kind of weird.
Oh, perfect.
So the 2021 to 2022 survey is coming out next month. So definitely do the survey, help us to improve the research and have more data to learn more about how people learn with each other online.
Where could we find that survey? Sorry, go on.
Yeah.
Oh, it's all good. It's all good.
You can find it on DND research on not on Twitter, but mostly on Instagram. And also there's a website. If you just type dndresearch.com, you will be able to find some of our organization's data. So that survey will be posted, and we have a newsletter where we'll send out as well.
Something I wanted to touch on this real quick too, this particular slide that we're seeing right here. When we did our panel at New York Comic Con, somebody came up to me afterward and they were like, hey, I don't know if virtual reality is going to be that big moving forward because my group has been really dedicated to physical stuff and we like playing in person. And I don't doubt that person's experience at all. I bet their group is that way. But it's kind of inevitable that it's going to be moving into a more digital landscape. But with all of that happening, we've seen something similar to this happening with how a lot of media is consumed right now. People are going to want a more like authentic old school experience, kind of like how, for example, movies and television are more advanced than they've ever been. But we see a lot of people who are turning to like podcasts and audiobooks recently, going more toward what like radio theater used to be, which people thought was a dead art form for a while. But the more complicated and advanced something gets, the more groups of people get dedicated to finding the original version or like the old school, like more tangible and physical version there, which definitely plays a role in VR and AR and whatever digital environment you find yourself in, because at least in my experience, whatever technology you're using will never be as powerful as your imagination as a person and your ability to immerse someone and capture someone with your descriptions. But it definitely helps keep everybody on the same page.
Yeah, I want to touch on that as well. In one of the research, one person said that he teach a lot of young children, and then a lot of time they encounter is, so where I'm at, where is that? What am I seeing exactly? Asking those detailed questions. But when you take care of the visual element for them already, then they can focus much more in the storytelling and developing their
Yeah.
character and actually in the game itself. So it's really, they're saying the visualization is so important for some group of people. And like having that as a like kind of option is great, and having that to be produced quickly really reduced like time consuming, and it really helped him to build more like bigger environment for the groups. So I think that's kind of why technology is moving that way and why this is important to gaming.
Absolutely, absolutely. Especially when games start being used more as educational tools, which they definitely have room and reason to be. Being able to take care of the visual stuff as quickly as possible, so you can move on to the full engaging aspect of everything, will be insanely important. I'm all about that, man. I'm all about the visual representations. Even though I'm not the most accomplished artist in the world, I try.
Yeah. I mean, what's not on here is also like, where do AI stands in terms of like crafting stories, right? So that's another interesting area people talk about a lot, is like, we are crafting stories right now as humans, and what's the next step? Like, who's going to craft stories? Like, it's
You know
AR
those
game masters, like AI game master is going to be available. Like,
You know those AI bots that you can feed like a section of a story and it'll try to complete the story for you? God, I really want to see one of those work with any D&D pre-written adventure. Just see how it spirals off into chaos.
yeah, I think is one. I just can't remember the
Oh,
name, but
good.
like it ends up like killing players pretty frequently.
And if that's not the cyberpunk nightmare we were all waiting for, I don't know what is.
And on that note, we have about 2.5 minutes left. So I'm going to say thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you.
It's super dope.
Thank
Do you
you.
want to tell us a little bit about yourself and where we can find more on Cartographer, your research, D&D research, and also your work as a dungeon master in the last couple of minutes of this panel?
Joanna, do you want to go first? You're on this side for me. Joanna, do you want to go first?
Sure. You can find me at CartographR_AR. So that's a cartographer without the E. You can also find me at Ribbon and Knot. That's the account I probably use the most, where I craft D&D jewelries. I don't know how much you can see, but this is like one of my work. You can open it up and then take the dice out and
They're
put the
super
dice
cool.
back in. Yeah, so they're super cool. Check them out. And again, last one you can find me is D&D Research. It's a great academic research platform for Dungeons and Dragons and also just tabletop RPG in general. Yeah.
And I'm Max Hobbs. You can find me at Dungeon Master Max on pretty much all social media, everything. You can also find me on the Help Action podcast or help-action.com, where you can hear about all my home games I have going on and all my crazy stuff that I'm into D&D wise. You can also find me working with orcs. That's an exclamation point after each orc here in Portland. And you can find me working with, I know this. I love them. Level Eater, there we go, which is a charity organization that works in Portland and Chicago. And that's Portland, Oregon, for all my East Coast friends out there. I'm sorry, I've never been to Portland, Maine, but I'll probably go someday.
It's a good Portland.
I've heard.
Thank you both so much again. And also I want to say thank you to our wonderful stream producer, who you guys don't get to see, but we all get to see. Miriam is great. And also to our Twitch moderator, Kemi. and to Sean and Big Bad Con for hosting this. And we will see you all in the post-panel chat on Discord. So be sure to get on the Discord, and that will be there for the next however long everybody wants to talk about this panel, which is hopefully quite a long time because it's pretty cool.
Oh, thank you.
Have a wonderful evening, all of you.
Thanks, everybody.